conversation is all about lessons from Canada, addressing paramedic shortages with innovation and integration. And from Medavie, I'm joined by Carla, Manager of Professional Development and Quality Assurance, and Reid, General Manager of Medavie Health Ed. So lovely to have you both here today in conversation. So to begin with, can you introduce us to Medavie and the kind of work that you're doing to support paramedic education and workforce development in Canada?
So Medavie is a Canadian-wide company. We have over 8,000 employees, I believe, across the country, and we're the largest provider of emergency medical services in the country. And one of the innovative things we've done is recently traveled to Australia for some international recruitment and provided some educational training, having the Educational Institution of Health Ed within Medavie's companies. We were able to offer some and provide some training for the Australian paramedics to come work in Canada.
Nice. And so workforce shortages, they continue to be a key challenge, don't they, across emergency healthcare? Yep. What factors have led to the development of Medavie's GAP training program for internationally trained paramedics?
So, and it is fact that we have a huge shortage, not only in paramedicine, but in all health disciplines. So we worked really hard at how do we get people into that profession, or how do we assist them in working in our industry? So we looked at a few avenues, and the GAP training that we did with Australia was one of those avenues. And it was a process, I think, that we have, as Carla mentioned, being nationwide, but also one of the largest companies that owned their own school. We were actually able to take the training from the school side and put it into operations to support both of those. So it was a good opportunity, or a unique opportunity that we had, that we were then able to look at different parts of the world and bring those folks to us to help on the shortage side, while also looking at regular domestic student involvement, but international students coming in. So it was just one of three, but it has been a very effective one for us.
Yeah. And then Medavie's GAP program, it's successfully drawn on the Australian model. What aspects of the model made it a good fit for Canada?
There's a couple of things. Canada's transitioning, and Carla will talk a little bit about some of the technical side, but as we're transitioning into more evidence-based and career-based type of profession, the Australian model really met that. So it was a nice, easy meld for the two of those to come together, and we were able to help divide that with the GAP training. When we actually looked at the training that the Australian paramedics had versus what we were delivering, there was very small changes or differences. So it was very easy for us to build that GAP training that coincided with operations, and it was easy to meld it directly into that process.
Yeah, it wasn't extensive. So we felt it was a really nice fit, that there was minimal training required to bring them to the level we needed for the Canadian licensure. So it worked really well.
And what does that GAP training look like in practice? Like, what kinds of training and support and adjustments are involved for incoming paramedics?
So the training that we provided was a mix of some classroom training, some high fidelity simulations, skills-based, that type of thing. That took anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So we definitely were flexible in meeting the needs of the cohorts that we brought over, because everyone's a little bit unique in their experience and their background. And then we also offered an extensive mentorship program after the training was done. So they were partnered with another paramedic at the same license level that we trained them to for about 3 months after, just to provide them with some support, guidance, build up their confidence level. And again, that was very unique to each individual. Some people required a little bit of extra, some people maybe not as much. And the nice thing is we were able to be really flexible with that.
And from your perspective, what are some of the most valuable skills or experiences that internationally trained paramedics bring to the Canadian system?
So Brad already mentioned it a little bit. So the Canadian trained paramedic, for the most part, is very technically trained, very focused on advanced care, airway support, critical thinking skills, and they do a very extensive amount of time for clinical and practicum as part of being a student, where depending on the college that they attend, they either come out with a diploma, or we're starting to transition into degree programs in Canada. whereas the Australian model is a Bachelor of Paramedicine. And they spend a lot more time academically on understanding disease processes, pathophysiology, evidence-based medicine, research, that type of thing. And what we found is pairing them together with a Canadian paramedic has made an incredible team. So that kind of technical experience that the Canadian paramedic brings and that academic, research-based, evidence-based that the Australian brings has made a really, really great team and provided some excellent patient care.
And definitely a good meld as we're transitioning from our side into that evidence base and building on their technical side. It's been a really nice mix.
Right. How do the Canadian paramedic competency profiles help structure the GAP process and guide learning outcomes?
So that's I'll say our biggest challenge right now, because Canada's in a huge transition. And we've had a national competency profile since 2001, very definitely outdated, and that's being updated. And the organization that controls that, the Paramedic Association of Canada, is now developing a new process or a new set of competencies, which they're referring to as the National Competency Framework for Paramedics. So it is definitely updated. But at the same time, we have the Canadian Organization of Paramedic Regulators, who have designed their own level of education and competency requirements. So our challenge when we were looking at other places like Australia was, how does their profile match with our profile, and what do we need to do to fit in the middle of those? And so it's given us a little bit of a challenge, but at the end of the day, because we were so close and had a lot of similarities, it wasn't a huge workload when we got to it. And those were going to continue for the next few years as we transition into this more evidence-based process. So I think the transition will be very good, and everybody will sort of fit into the mix.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the Canadian Organisation of Paramedic Regulators.
Yes.
Can you talk us through a little bit of the role and how they support internationally trained professionals in becoming practice ready?
So as the organization of regulators across our country, and if you think of Canada, we do have a national scope, but every province has their own sort of version of that. So it's been a challenge. Carla working in Saskatchewan, I'm working in Nova Scotia. We have a lot of similarities, but we also have differences. And I don't think that's unlike any place else in the world when you look at how paramedics are regulated. But the organization with Copper, they've been able to take that sort of level set for us. So we have a national exam that we're able to get our graduates to write, or even somebody coming in to do GAP training still has to do that. So we're able to show that they've met the standard that we're looking for at a national level.
I'd say also they were very good to work with and continue to be, but with our Australian recruitment mission, we partnered with some of the paramedic regulator, the provincials, and the national regulator. They're very interested in international recruitment as well, and so they were eager to support and help us through that.
And what are some of the broader lessons that Medavie has learned through developing and delivering this GAP training program? What are the key takeaways that might be relevant to other systems facing similar workforce challenges?
Flexibility and adaptability.
Yep.
There's a lot of things that we didn't know that we learned throughout this process, and each cohort that comes to Canada now, because we've had 5 cohorts, I believe now, it gets easier and easier each time because we've passed that hurdle with this group and we can go to the next one. But communication and adaptability, I think, and also being willing to be wrong and change as needed. So from my own personal example, in the province I'm in, we had 2 different cohorts come, and we changed the model from the first group to the second group based on feedback from that first group of things that they liked, things that they didn't like, integrating some changes. And being able to integrate kind of the operational orientation to the company with the GAP training so that neither one was overwhelming. But I would say definitely being flexible and adaptable.
Absolutely. And every learner that comes to the GAP training, doesn't matter if they come from the same school or not, they both have different needs. And we found through self-assessment and then through the training that somebody may not be comfortable with something, so we're adaptable enough that we can add more of that for their simulations or their training that they're doing. And the benefit of Medavie owning both of these institutes, from operations to the education, is we can flex to that. And when operation needs something, our education can be up or made to counterbalance that. So that's been really good, and I think the learners have enjoyed that flexibility.
I would say one other piece I would add is not just the education or the operationalization of this, is the support of the individual. So housing, transportation, just those human aspects were really important to help support them in transitioning from moving literally around the globe to a different country, a new healthcare system, you know, a new way of life. The culture is similar in Canada and Australia, but there's still enough difference that it was important that we supported them all around, not just as an employer or education.
And what's the key message that you'd like to leave with regulators or service leaders or paramedics who are considering implementing or taking part in a GAP training program?
I think it's a great initiative for anybody to get involved with. I think the key message out of it is that flexibility that Carla mentioned, but also recognizing that you're building your system up to counterbalance the health needs that you have. But on both sides, as a learner coming in, you have to recognize we're not doing this because we think you're different than us. We're doing this to get everybody on the same page. And I think if you're planning on doing this, it's a great initiative, but just have to be that flexible person on both sides.
Relationship building. So like I mentioned, the relationships we built. So we have the relationship with educational institution within Medavie, but also, like I mentioned before, with the regulators. They're a very important part of this. If they aren't on board, it won't be successful. So the communication and relationships are very important as well.
Carla, Brad, thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.